Hello everybody. This is the second video I'm making on processing of cotton or farming cotton in Farming Simulator 15. The previous one was on a cotton picker that had a basket or bulk. We can just look at the picture of it real quick. Here's a real life picture. John Deere 9950. This one here, I wanted to also have one that was a cotton baler. And this is also a John Deere, the CP690. We'll say again, I don't know anything about cotton farming, processing, or whatever. So this is going off of kind of my own my own imagination on how it seems things should work. And I didn't create a model, but I found one floating around in FarmSim 15 on the internet, and it looks sort of like this. This is what the real life one is, and similar to the basket one. I think with the cutter unit up here, this behaves similar to a combine. It's going to strip it or pick it somehow off of the cotton plant. It uses air, I believe, to push it up here into the machine. And then similar to a round baler that we're all familiar with using in Farming Sim 15, it's going to turn it in there somehow and wrap around the outside in some kind of material, I don't know what it is, and turn it into a cotton bale. And I think the thing grows in here over time, and then it opens as you see here. And ours, the model that we have, looks similar to this, but obviously doesn't have all the details that this one here has. So why don't we just look at the model that we have here real quick. I suppose kind of like the other one, I should get on the other side so you see it in the same perspective. So here we have it in the Giants editor and without the cutter unit up front, but you see where the air will push it up into here. And you know, this is my own speculation because, again, I don't know how these machines work, but I see the vents kind of on the side here, and I'm wondering if the air goes up, the air needs a place to escape, so it's going to fly out here. Meanwhile, the cotton will remain inside, and then it will be rolled up into a bale kind of over in here. And obviously, before modding a picker, cotton picker, or even thinking of using one, we first need to make sure that the map has it installed on it. Now, I kind of spoke about the ad in the previous video on the basket. I'm really not going to go into the ad here as to the work that's necessary to install it in a map. But this particular app that I'm using, I have it already installed, so it should work for testing purposes to do it. Now, this particular mod, I didn't make it. I just downloaded it off the internet, and it really, and I went into this in the previous video, it had a bunch of problems, and I think it was carried over perhaps from FarmSim 13. Maybe it even came from a previous version, but it really didn't work. You know, it's supposed to kick out bales, but when you take it in game as it was, it wouldn't do anything. Matter of fact, I think you could harvest with it. It would let you do that, but it would just take it in. I think someone had put just a massive uh, fill or capacity, if you will, so you could combine or harvest cotton for a long period of time, but you'd never be able to kick out a cotton bale. Well, obviously, we wanted something a little bit different here for our purposes, so I wanted it to actually work, and I'll go into that in just a little bit. But it's one thing to have cotton in the map. It's another to have bales. So one of the things I had to do was make sure that we had a cotton bale put in there. And this one here, again, I didn't make it. Someone else did, even colored it the same. So there's a 3D object of a bale, and I don't know, do I have the script up here? Maybe I do. Yeah, there's a script made by If Conator, if that's how you say his name, back in the day, that would install this to a playing session. So you specified in his mod description the type of bale you wanted to add. So this line here is where we added a cotton bale. So we told it where it was stored, the model that I just showed a little bit ago, gave it some details, size, and so forth. And then I think we had to come in here and tweak his script just a little bit. And some of this has to do with some of the things I was doing on this map where I'm testing it. And I actually had a cotton windrow. Oh, where to start on this? A lot of crops have a windrow that comes with it, like wheat. When you harvest it, you have the option of dropping a windrow or not. But some crops, such as canola, doesn't have a windrow. Well, neither does cotton. It doesn't have a windrow either. But in this map that I was playing, I figured out a way to put some snow on the mountaintops, and I needed a windrow, if you will, for it to drop. So I chose cotton, which is white. And so anyway, all that to say is the script here was kind of confused as to what cotton windrow was, and maybe that's all I should say, and that's probably saying too much. Suffice it to say, I had to modify it in here a little bit, but this is the script that installs or registers, if you will, the cotton bale into the map. So once we have that in the map, then we can do work on this over here and get it to work for our purposes in the map. So looking at the model here, I'm trying to think of a number of changes or updates that I made to it. I know I put some particle systems in here. And I don't know if there is any particles. For all I know, it flies up in here. The YouTube videos that I've seen of these in action, it doesn't even look like there's a lot of dust. I would assume there'd be dust boiling out of here if there was any. And then when the thing's open, I kind of did a little bit of work here with these, getting them to open and shut. Of course, the model already did those things. The part I had to figure out was how far to open and shut. I think I had to install a bale node kind of right here in the middle, which is where, if you look at it in game, which we'll see in a little bit, you can watch the bale grow. It's probably nothing like real life, because in real life you would roll it around and then the last thing you would do would be to wrap it. But I think in Farming Sim, what you see is that yellow bale start just like a really small spindle, and it gradually gets larger until it reaches full size. So I know I put something like that in there. Is that all? It seems like there's so much I've done in here, but I can't even remember. I think I adjusted the wheels so that they behaved a little better with collisions, but in some ways, who cares? It's the model, so this is kind of what we did. What I actually did too was a lot of XML work for the parts. Let me see here. I think it's in here. So the CP690. And kind of like I explained in the previous video, none of us are experts at modding. And so what I think someone probably did is they rolled this mod over from FarmSim 13 to 15, and they probably didn't have enough knowledge to do all the steps themselves. So they at least got it in game. They got it to where you could buy it. They got it to where you could use it, but they needed just a little bit more to get it to function really the way it should. So I had to do some work in here in the XML. A lot of this, it looks like it was just carried over from the John Deere 9950. And a lot of times that's what folks will do. They'll take a similar mod and they will copy everything over to make it work. And I'm pretty sure these guys took the John Deere 9950 and they put a different model in there, but they kind of wanted to keep the layout. So they even named the i3D file the same thing. So that's kind of their starting point. But when you look through here, there are remnants of things, or things that in here that they really don't belong. For example, fill volumes. This is something you would see in a combine. When you look at the grain tank and you watch it fill, that's kind of what the fill volume is. Well, in this here, it's building a bale, so there is no area where it's storing cotton in bulk, if you will. It's building a bale. So there's really no use for this. I probably could get rid of it. Oh, yeah, I need to come in and fix the fill scale. While I'm testing it, I had it multiply the crop output by 10, just so I can make bales quicker. And you'll see that here in a little bit when I go in game. Had to, because it's a baler also, we added, well, and maybe that's something else. Let's just look at this, go over to here. Any given mod or a vehicle that it comes with the game will have a number of what are called specializations associated with them. And it's usually multiple. It's very rare that you'll see a mod that has just one specialization. I suppose they're out there. But particularly for something with a complexity of a cotton picker or a combine, it's going to be multiple ones in here. So whenever you set up a new mod, we of course had to list all the needed specializations. And some of these specializations, by the way, depend on ones that come before it. So a lot of times you don't have any choice. You have to add all those things. And knowing what's in these helps you know how to populate the XML file for the vehicle. Because each one of these specializations ask for certain things to be identified in the vehicle's XML file. So I think in later versions of Farming Sim, maybe starting with Farm Sim 19, maybe it was earlier, I don't recall. This is 15, of course. But you could start with something and identify it up here as to what kind of vehicle it was, and then you could continue and add just one or two new specializations. But I think in FarmSim 15, if you were going to add even a single specialization to a certain vehicle, you basically had to, run the whole list out. So what you see here, all these specializations here are basically the combine specializations. And combine, of course, appears, well, there's AI combine. Here's combine right here. Anyway, the one I wanted to add was the baler specification. I mean, just like we use the baler in game to make hay bales, grass bales, straw bales, whatever, we need to, in this case, to make cotton bales. So round bales in particular, round cotton bales. So I knew that this needed to have that specialization added. So I went ahead and created one and just called it cotton baler. And anytime you add a new specialization, you have to indicate where the data is, or the coding, if you will, for that specialization. So I created that over here. And basically what I did is I started with the FarmSim 15 Baler specification, and then I modified it. Yeah, see, it wasn't written by me. It was written by, I think, isn't he one of the owners of the whole game? Stefan Geiger. So I used what he started with, changed the names, and added or deleted code as needed to help me get this to produce bales. So we'll go over that in just a moment. Let me go back to this. So that's where, when we add a specialization like bailing, we need a whole bunch of information. The game engine does as to, okay, now you're also a bailer, so you need to feed certain things to it that it needs to do the bailing. One of which was bail animation. And this is what happens, and anybody familiar with around Baler knows when you have a bale in there, it's ready to be taken out of the baler. There's a certain sequence of events that you go through. Obviously, the tractor comes to a stop, and I think it's the O key you press, and it opens the back, and you see the bale kind of come out. And then you hit it again, and it closes the door on the baler. So you have the same dynamic here for opening and closing the door and unloading the bale. So I I know it looks like just a little bit here, and there maybe are people that are way smarter than me that would figure this out quicker. But this here, what it does is it goes off of time, and this is I think seconds. So this here says for this particular node on the model. So like if we take this one here, 036, if we come to the model, let's just see where that is. That's 35. Here's 36. Okay, so 36, that we can see that up here, the index path, is this particular door. Now, when it's shut, you'll notice over here in the rotate X, here's the shut position, it's at 0. So we go back to the XML, and what we're asking it to do is at 1 second, between 1 and 4 seconds, change from a rotation of 000 to 9500. So it's going to gradually open this until it reaches here. So that'll be the maximum open spot. And so I had to do a bunch of experimenting in here, and I'm mainly sharing this so others, you can either suggest a better way to do it if you disagree with how I did it, or if there's a mod you want to tweak. Let's say you're messing with one of these and it isn't opening quite as far as you would like. Well, this is kind of where you would change that. It's a type of animation, and we could get it to open even larger if we wished. But this is a rotation, and you can also rotate it. It's got the X, the Y, and the Z axis. But to open the door here, we only want to rotate on the X axis. And then there's several other parts and different times too. Time is always going to start at 0. This one here started at 1 to 4, so 037. If we just return here real quick, I think that's this piece here, the lift. And this is one area I got to admit my ignorance. When I first started looking at this, I didn't know what this was for. And apparently you can create a bale, and because it's more efficient to park the bale kind of on a particular area of the field than others, maybe you can accumulate a couple of them there at the same time, or maybe you can haul it to the end of the row so whoever's picking the bales up doesn't have to wander into the field. Well, you can carry them on this lift unit right here. Well, I didn't know that. I thought it was just another type of door, if you will. So the way I set this up was to time the opening of these two so that they wouldn't collide with one another. I just figured both had to open in order for the bale to be spit out. So that, like I say, is one area where I'm just admitting my ignorance on how cotton equipment works. So 037, from 0 to 2 seconds, it's going to rotate it to 65, and then even a little bit further in 2 more seconds. The reason this starts before the other one is because we want to get this door out of the way before this one starts to swing up. So I think this goes, what did it say? I had a maximum extent of minus 115 on the x-axis. So we'll just see what that is. If I type in minus 115, it lays it out pretty well kind of on the ground and when this was open, the bale, of course, would topple out and kind of roll down. At least that's kind of how I thought it worked. And that is how it's going to work in game. In order to do it the way they do it in real life, I think it would take a bunch more work to create a separate input binding to control this door separate from this, or excuse me, this lift separate from this door to allow you to hold bales in it. And I mean, I had a dickens of a time with this, just getting it to do what it does. One of the problems, for example, with this model, the way it was set up, is there was hardly any collisions in it. I think I think whoever put it together borrowed some parts from some other models, and they didn't quite fit. So fit this, so I had to add my own collision here. It's kind of hokey. It takes up the whole model, so it doesn't work quite right. But anyway, I kind of got the effect about where I wanted it in game, so that's the main thing for me, I think. But it certainly could use a whole lot more work, and if we wanted to carry a bale on this and drop it later, it would take even more work. But it could be done. It could be done. So let me go back in here. So these doors are working in tandem to open up 36, 37, 38. 38 is the bale node. So inside here is a bale that's growing, and then what it's going to do is it's going to move. We're going to move this part of the model, this axis, and it's going to transport the bale out of the machine with kind of invisible hands, if you will, and while all these gates are open, and it's going to put it out on the ground. So this is even more animation, and it isn't going to start moving the bale until we're 1.5 seconds in. And between 1.5 and 2.5 seconds, it's going to rotate it on the x-axis again between 25 and minus 125. So it's really going to move quite a bit, right at the start. And while it's rotating, that's just kind of turning it in place. Then there's start and end trans. What this means is it's going to move it laterally with these coordinates. And like I say, I just had to do it bit by bit to figure out where the E's should be, because the idea is, if I go back in here just to show kind of what I'm after, if the if the door is open, about like so, you have a bale starting here. Let me just show the node. It's going to be right here. So I wanted to show the bale kind of turning as it came out, gradually falling down this ramp, if you will, onto the field before it would be released. So that's kind of what's going on with the coding in here. And this is unloading process. That's all of this, and then over here, close the door. What's happening is it's doing it all in reverse. I probably didn't have to do some of this because it's invisible. You don't even see it. But I don't know, just from my simple mind, I just did the reverse of what I'm showing up here to get ready for the next time. So there really was a pile of work, putting a bale in there and getting it to work just by adding these animations. And some of these, kind of like I was saying, when you start with a similar mod, if you will, and you bring all of its parts over to it, you sometimes have remnants or things that you just don't need. For example, one of those would be pipe particle systems. Well, if we once again go back to the model, there is no pipe. But if you look really closely at this, maybe if I can highlight it here, we maybe could see it in game. There is a pipe on this because the parts were, like I said earlier, pulled, I think, from another model and put on here. But just because they're here doesn't mean they're visible, and it doesn't mean they work in game. This will not, you can't come up alongside it with a tractor and unload cotton into it. The only way you can get cotton out is, of course, by rolling a bale out. So my point is I probably should do something and remove this. I don't know if I will. This isn't something I'm going to release to the public anyhow, so it's there. Um, Chopper particle systems, that's something I went ahead and added here. And again, I have no idea if there's any particles that come out at all. I would assume there's probably some if there's a lot of air blowing through, but I don't know if anything's coming underneath. This is going to look like I gave it a similar particle animation as if you were combining corn. And so there's a little bit, we'll see it in game, we'll see it out the back of the machine, but there probably is none. I don't think there's any material that passes through other than cotton, and the cotton, of course, stays inside and turns into a bale. Seems like I had to do a little with the exhaust effects. You know, they were in here. Let me just show you where it's at. Let me put this down so we can see. Put this back up. And somewhere up in here we have particles, exhaust. So as near as I can tell on this machine, and again, I wasn't familiar with these things, but as near as I can tell, the engine compartment is down here. A lot of times on a combine, it'll be behind the operator or to the side of the operator, or even in the back up on top. But apparently these, I think it's down here. And I looked all over YouTube and pictures trying to figure out where the exhaust is. I think there should be a pipe coming out here somewhere. Whoever made the model did and put those details in. But there was an exhaust, and it was just hanging somewhere out here in the middle of nowhere. It looked kind of hokey. So I at least moved the exhaust close to the frame of the model. So we'll see something coming out. It'll at least be close to where I think the engine compartment is. I wanted to try to figure out where that was at least. Here's another remnant, fill planes. When you don't have a grain tank, there is no need for a fill plane. We won't see cotton accumulating in there, other than in the bale. So this really is something I need to get rid of. But anyway, just to show a little bit on the XML, move to the Baler here. This is a Lewis script, and I don't know how much to bore people looking at this. You know, this is one thing I had to do twice. I had a massive computer failure back several months ago, and this is one of the things that I ended up losing. And it's never fun to have to redo it. I didn't back it up, so I had to redo it. But kind of like I mentioned a little bit ago, this is the Baler script modified to work kind of with a combine, if you will, for our purposes here. There are several other scripts that are grabbed for multiplayer purposes. I don't know if this would work in multiplayer or not. It may. So these are events. And multiplayer compatibility, just so folks know, is the server. Whenever you have multiplayer, there's multiple computers talking to each other. That's basically what they're doing. And so you have the host or the server, which has the main game running on it. That's where the save game is and where most of the calculation takes place, if you will. And then you have what's called the client. Those are everybody who joins the multiplayer session, if you will. And so the computers need to communicate with each other. And so anybody trying to compute or program multiplayer stuff has to ask themselves the question, what does the host know that the client doesn't know, and vice versa? So a lot of times the things that get passed back and forth are they're pretty simple things. They're really stuff like input bindings. You know, if the player on the client computer that joins, you know, every time they so much as turn a steering wheel, or exercise an input binding, the server needs to know about it. So a lot of times these events, this is a create bale, this is set unloading. So this would be like an input binding that would be shoved through here. It's like, hey server, the player at the client wants to open the baler and get the bale out. That's really what this is doing. But there's other things that the server handles. For example, all the bales that are made and tracked happen on the server. They don't happen at the client. But the client needs to know about it so that they can duplicate them and show them at least for the player that is on client. So whenever there's a new bale that gets generated, the server then has to say, hey client, we just made a new bale. Here's the information that you need for it. So that's kind of what this script is over here, but the main motor of it, if you will, is in here. Like I said, this is basically the Baler script. Up here, it's calling these events for multiplayer purposes. I took it and I renamed it from Baler to Cotton Baler and just changed a number of things in here. And like I say, I got rid of certain code that we didn't need. I added things that I wanted and took away some other things that we didn't need. And I can't remember off the top of my head just what all those things were. A lot of it we kind of went through already in the XML. We mainly wanted to load up Baler type stuff. And by the way, if you ever wonder how to put things in the XML file, you can see kind of how it's structured. Let me find something related to bales. Okay, here's one. Baler sound. There's a certain sound the baler makes. I don't know if cotton baler makes that sound, but it's going to get it anyhow. But you see how it is with the brackets here in XML. So the way you see it listed here, there is Lua script. There always is Lua script that asks to get this. So let's go look at that real quick. Let me see. Lots of animations. Where's the sound? Sound. Aha, here we go. Baler sound. I think that's the one we were looking at, right? Right. Baler sound. So, and it even has it bifurcated in the code, if you will. Self is client. That means, hey, if you are joining a multiplayer session, if you are the client computer, that's where you play the sounds. There's typically no need to play them on the server because a lot of times a server sits in some room 1,000 miles away from where you may be playing, and there's no need to play sounds there. So it's client where we play the sounds. Anyway, it's looking it up, vehicle, Baler sound. So it's looking up the XML file. The XML file is CP690. Clear at the top, you will see vehicle, and then it's going to search for the tag Baler sound, and it's come back in here, and it's going to load whatever it finds there. Now, it isn't as explicit in this particular one as to what it's looking for. But if you follow the code on what this is doing, what utils load sample is doing, it's going to grab this sound file. It's going to look at these details, the volume and the pitch offset that are here, and it's going to incorporate it into the game engine and for this particular mod. I just wanted to point that out. So I guess my point is if you want to know what goes in an XML file or how to set it up, it's useful to learn just a little bit of Lua. Because then what you can do is once you know all these specializations that are for a particular mod, you can look at each one, because each one of them has a load section, just like we have here. That's where you would look, load. And then you can see anything you see over here where it's calling the XML file. Here's unload animation, vehicle, bale animation, unload animation name. Well, I'm pretty sure we have that over here. So vehicle was at the top, bale animation, unload animation name, unload bale. So there it is. Unload animation name. It's grabbing it. And in this case, by the way, when you give it a name, when it's animation, you also have to then define the animation here below. This is some of the stuff that you learn after a long time working with this stuff. And so hopefully someone seeing this can start connecting some dots in here. There used to be some really good forums that would share how to do some of this, and some of it was just experimentation and tinkering until it worked or kind of worked, and then you clapped your hands and moved on. But so just like there's unload bail, closed door, it's defined down here. And something about whether it's XML coding or Lua coding, it's very, very exact. You have to spell it and use capital letters exactly the same between them, or the game engine is going to give you fits in the log file and tell you things just aren't working. So this up here, it's loading all the things that we want it to load, the bail type, sounds, so forth and so on, as is every other specialization. And this has other common things in here that you would see, whether in the Baler script or others. Read stream, write stream. This is upon join of a multiplayer session. The client is going to read from the server's going to write to the client. So it's going to kind of come out here and it's going to come in over here. Say, here's what you need to know to get up to speed. Then there's various functions in here that will get called. So not to belabor the point, I'm trying to see here where I did the most work, I think was primarily in this update tick section. Now, when a mod is being used in game, for those interested maybe in Lua coding a little bit, update is something called every frame of the game. So if you're running 60 frames per second, this is going to be called 60 times every second. At least that's my understanding of it. Update tick is still fast, but it isn't quite every frame. So it's got a little bit of a delay built in. And how much of a delay, I really don't know. Maybe it defines that somewhere. I'm not real sure. So for things like that you want to be very responsive, like an input binding, those typically you're going to see up here in update. And that's exactly what we see here. With a round baler, there's an action to unload the bale. So you see there's an input binding here, input extra 3. I think that's keys O. And you can load and unload. So that happens up here in update. Very responsive. Update tick, not as responsive. So this is the engine, if you will, where it's accumulating the material as it's baling. It's going to create a bale and then kick it out. So a lot of this in here, like I say, came from the Baler script, and I just couldn't use it. The baler was intended to stand on its own. It had its own fill level. But when you're interacting with the combine also has its own fill level that's going to be turned into a bale. So I had to undo and redo some things in here. And sometimes, like this here is just flat out hard coding. Because it isn't as responsive, one of the things that we're doing here is when the fill level, that is the combine, has accumulated as much cotton as fits the capacity, then turn it into a bale. That's what's going on down here. This stuff here is for a square bale. This down here is going to be for a round bale. So this actually never gets called up here because we're doing a round baler. But I had to tweak it here with because it was so slow. The other parts would go quicker. Fill level would be already at capacity, and something would turn off the combine, so wouldn't even come to the code here to create a bale. So I had to get it to kind of forward anticipate it a little bit. Probably a more experienced programmer would know better how to do it. I just built it in. Hey, before this thing gets built and try to make it in lockstep of actuality, here's when you generate and kick out the bale. And we'll see in game if it works. I think it does. So this is where I did most of the work. The rest of all this in here, I mean, I'm pretty sure I made some tweaks here and there to get it to work. And unfortunately, I had to do some hard coding in here to find the right bale. That isn't optimum, but like I say, I'm not going to be releasing this. So I don't know that I particularly care as long as it does, you know, what I needed to do in game. So just looking here to see if there's anything else major that I did. And oh yeah, this is a whole section in here where the bale is made. And in theory, we could set this up also to generate square bales. You know, there was another modder I'm aware of that was working on some cotton stuff, and I kind of think he was doing some big cotton bales, loaf kinds, if you will, or rectangular shaped. Well, yeah, I don't know how to do that. So I mean, it was made to work so that at least the round bale part would spit out okay, but it could be tinkered with to work even for square. Oh, you know what? I'm gonna turn this off. Anytime you work with a Lua script and you want to know kind of what it's doing, you can put in a print function, and what this will do is put something in the log to help you know that something's happening. You know, if you ever were like I must have been, it's like, is this even coming here? Is the game ever coming to this section of code? Because this is where the bale gets created. So I threw something in here to reassure me that it was, which and tells me that the problem isn't coming here. The problem maybe is down here in registering a bale. So that's just a little tidbit, Lua coding. So without any further ado, and who knows how long this has gone on, let's just take it in game. I have Autumn app set up. Oh, there's my trusty sheep. So I have a whole field of cotton here, and similar to the other video that I made using the basket cotton picker, I'm just kind of starting here with ignore the wheat or whatever that is sitting there. Started with a full field here, so why don't we pick a little bit of cotton. Here it is, how it looks in game, and we'll just give this a run. Start it up. And I think I'm just going to hire. Now remember, you'll see the material accumulating really quickly in there. I have it on 10 times normal speed, just to get it to kick out of bale quicker. Yeah, there's particle animation. You can kind of see it happening. That stuff sprinkling behind there. I have no idea. That's probably not realistic. I probably shouldn't even have that in there. Another thing that I don't think is quite realistic is, oops, look at the, I think in real life they leave more of the plant there. It doesn't quite shear it off like it's showing here. So maybe if I really wanted to get into realism, I should do something different about that. But you know, I mean, this is okay too. This is okay too. And actually in real life, I think I've seen some videos of people out there mowing the stubble left behind, because there's quite a bit of foliage left before they may be incorporated into the soil. Now, looking in here, you can see, and we'll do this again, you can see that there's a bale in there that has grown, so we're going to take him off higher mode, and yeah, this all should show up in here. We're going to unload the baler. We'll watch the animation work. It isn't perfect, but you know what? It got it out on the ground, so I'm going to hit O again. We're going to close this thing up, and we're ready to go again to go get another bale. See how it's growing kind of in there? I don't know that anybody would spend a lot of time looking at it for that purpose, but you can definitely see the bale growing inside there. Once again, we'll take it off here and open her up. out comes another bale. And something I worked on here, to make sure to try to get some realism into it. You can't, like right now I'm pressing B, trying to turn on the harvester. It won't let me because the door is open back here. There really is no other place for the cotton to go, I don't think. So I don't know that you can continue moving when you have the thing just sitting here wide open like that. So, nor can you hire it. I don't even know that it gives you the option. So, we're going to close it up, and then we'll send it off to generate another one. And I apologize, there's all sorts of obstacles in this field. We'll see if he tangles with some of these rocks. Yeah, it might be a little bit close. Just as we generate a few bales here. Kick that off. The animation isn't perfect, but I think it's good enough for my purposes. Frankly, I'm not sure how much I'll use this anyways, because I can't really hire it. With the other one, you can hire it because you'll just fill it up sort of like a combine. But this one here, you have to babysit it to open every time a bale is created. Oh, and maybe I could get out and we can go see the exhaust. Yeah, there it is. There it is, pouring out of the engine compartment. There's no pipe or anything, but that's probably close enough. So, anyway, that's kind of what I did with the cotton baler. It's working, FarmerYip 15. Like I say, I think it was brought over from 13, but it didn't quite work. And maybe one other thing I would show. Probably some are pretty used to working with the universal auto load script. If I'm not mistaken, a lot of that was developed in FarmerYip 15, maybe even some of 13. I don't recall. But and this is beyond the scope of this, and I'm probably boring people to tears as it is. So, but I added it to this. You can see up in here, it's one of the categories to load cotton bales. So you had to load the model and place them on here as to where each one would go and that kind of thing. But once you take it in game, it's pretty easy to use. We'll just come over here and see if it works. I got it in work mode. There it goes. We'll pull a few of these marshmallows onto our truck. You could get a tractor and a front loader to do this too, but I'm all thumbs with that kind of thing, so this is probably how I'm going to use it in game. So I think you could also load another 3, which is probably totally unrealistic. I don't know. Maybe you can stack them up. So this is kind of how I have them in here now. And like I say, I've showed you the baler as to how it works. I've showed the other one, and I'll maybe just take a quick trip here up to where I'm doing something with it. So let me see. Not sure what the best way to get up there is. Let's just take a quick trip. Cut some corners here. I may just cut the video later this will even show the map a little bit. Like I said before, it's a Scottish map, so but I don't know that they grow any cotton in Scotland. Let me just hop in here, head up this dirt road, and if you put a new crop in the map, you have to do something with it. And most of the time, if it's a new grain, You know, for example, a lot of times you'll see triticale or whatever that's called. Well, it looks so similar to wheat that you basically assume you're just going to take it to sell it at the same place you would wheat. But this one here, I did some extra work and I put a mill on the map, and frankly, I think it's the same mill that is used for a place to deliver wool. But I turned it into a factory so it'll produce fabric and that kind of thing. Whoops, I think that's a fence. I'm gonna have to go around. I maybe should put a road in here so we can go around. I just love this map. And in the original, all of these were fields. I'm kind of adding my own spin to it, if you will, to make it tougher. But anyway, up here, clear at the top of the map, is this woolen mill or place to deliver cotton. There hopefully is a trigger up here that will take these bales. So let's see, I think I need to take it off work position. Let me just try to unload. Aha. Okay, so yeah, when the cotton is dropped off up here, it forms a bale over here. And I believe if you collect more, it's going to add several other bales if you accumulate enough material. There may be some things we need to put into here. I don't remember. Pallets, maybe. And then back here, it'll start creating textiles that can be sold kind of in town. Anyway, with that, I'll leave it there. I am sure this has gone on plenty long enough. Thank you so much for watching. This is just my own adventures with modding and working with a couple cotton pickers on this Glen Ellie map. Again, take care, and we'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye for now.